freaking magic. Welcome on into the SEC Unfiltered postgame show. He's Dave Shumate. I'm Thompson, breaking down everything that we saw at Memorial Stadium as Alabama college football playoff hopes. All of it goes down the drain. And Oklahoma's going bowling because they got a 24-3 victory real quickly. If you like the video, hit that ring notification down below because this is your number one source for all things SEC moving forward. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Follow us on the socials, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at SEC Unfiltered. Follow Dave at Mock 10 Sports, me at Mr. Cole Thompson, and check out all of our great work found at SECUnfiltered.com. This post-game show is brought to you by our friends over at MyBookie. Go to mybookie.ag and use the promo code SECU at sign-up to receive a special welcome offer with your first deposit. And it's not just coming down to college football. You can bet on basketball. You can bet on the NHL, the NBA. You can start getting early lines for next week's rivalry week. But whatever you want to do, go to mybookie.ag. Use that promo code SECU. I have no idea how to explain this game. Dave, I truly do not know if there are the right words. And you know what? If Oklahoma fans want to say, I can't believe that all you Gump graduates decided to explain this one. Sometimes magical things happen for a season of turmoil and tragedy, and you get to say you got to win. You get to say you got the victory. And Oklahoma did. And Oklahoma dominated. And Oklahoma came in with a game plan. Oklahoma had intentions. Oklahoma found an ideal opportunity to take away the best asset of Jalen Milroe. And by the time that the pressure started to pile on up, it was already too late. It's a magical season for this team. It's a magical season for this roster in terms of they get to go out to a bowl game. More importantly, they got to send the seniors out on a right note. That's exactly what this game was. And everything else, Sooner magic. Sooner magic. Credit to them. They balled out. It was a dominant performance by the defense. And Sooner magic prevailed at the very end.
Yeah, for people wondering why I'm not in the studio, but I did something to my back today working out. So I've been on the couch. I told Cole I barely mustered up to get this computer out here. So if you're wondering why I'm not in the normal backdrop and I'm on the couch, that's why. It's not I'm lazy or anything. But no, I mean, give Oklahoma their flowers. That was one of the most unprepared I can remember seeing an Alabama football team in a long time. And that's where I think Alabama fans got a little spoiled from a Nick Saban perspective. Was usually it took another really good team to beat them. They didn't usually drop games that were games they were supposed to win. You've seen two of them this year with Vanderbilt and Oklahoma. I think this one was probably worse. I don't know what the offensive game plan was, and if it was to run on Jalen Milroe expecting the same result you had against LSU. This is a really good Oklahoma defense. It has been all year. It's just the offense has let them down. We talked about it in the preview. Danny Stutzman, Billy Bowman, their last time playing in Memorial Stadium, they were going to have a good defensive performance. Brent Venables, a defensive head coach. They were not going to – if Alabama was going to have a good plan and come out there and execute on offense to win. That's what I mean. You both thought this game was going to be pretty close. Nothing went right. I mean, literally in all three phases, I would say Alabama did nothing right on offense, defense, special teams. Thought Oklahoma had a good plan defensively. I mean, they only threw for 68 yards. It was the game plan on offense was essentially let's just possess the football, don't turn it over. You get up to a 21-point lead, a 14-point lead. I think our defense can hold serve if I'm Brent Venables.
Honestly, that was the case. Their defense did enough, and they came in with the game plan. Here's the crazy part, Dave. This was a team that figured out pretty quickly, okay, we can't pass the football. We don't have any wide receivers. Brennan Thompson just went out. We tried a trick play where Bauer Sharp drops it in the end zone, and Twitter is in an uproar at that point. It should have been 10-3. It should have been 10-3 at that moment. But instead, they realized, okay, let's run the ball. Alabama, they had some struggles this year stopping a rushing attack. Go back to that game against Vanderbilt. They were able to communicate on the ground. They had an ideal opportunity, and they said, all right, we know what we got to do. And they did. They finished with 257 rushing yards. They averaged 5.1 yards per play. They had 6 runs of over 15 yards. And on top of that, they only had 68 passing yards. You had a good fan. That was it. You got your ideal situation. You put Alabama in a concern spot. They were able to get points. And then more importantly, you milked the clock. Because that was the beauty about this offensive performance, I think, from Brent Venables, was it's not just the fact that they were able to get the ball rolling on the ground. It's not just the fact that you saw some explosiveness from Jackson Arnold. You saw some explosiveness from Xavier
25
Robinson.
carries for Jackson Arnold. That's wild.
It's amazing how this performance was tonight, especially from him in that standpoint. It really is a good main. But the fact of the matter is, they knew that Alabama's offense wasn't hitting its stride at all. Not even a little bit. Until they said, defense, do your job. Just get a couple of 3 and outs, put some pressure on Jalen Milroe. And as soon as you do that, we're going to get the ball back and we're going to run the crap out of it. We're going to make sure that they don't have any opportunity to strike. Dave, they won the time possession by 34 minutes. It was an easy way to get Alabama feeling it. Don't let them touch the football and don't let them strike fast. And as soon as they got down and the 4th down touchdown pass was called back, and we'll get to that in a moment, we will. That was when you knew all we have to do is play keep away. The way that Alabama has played keep away in the past, the way that when you look at Texas last week against Arkansas, they could have scored, but instead they said, you know what? Let's just have 7 minutes of nonstop, non-action. We got it. We're good. That was what Oklahoma did tonight. That is exactly how Oklahoma handled business.
Yeah, recipe for, any kind of win against anybody. 257 on the ground, 5.1 yards per carry, only 4 penalties. You were +2 in turnover margin. And as you mentioned, you had the ball for 34 minutes and 11 seconds. I mean, third down was about even, 7 for 14, 7 for 15. Oklahoma won in every major statistic and across the board in all 3 phases. There's really no way to sugarcoat it. Again, it's the first time Alabama hadn't scored a touchdown in a game since 2000, I believe. Yeah, 2000. I don't know if I remember. May have been the UCF or UCLA game. I can't remember. But it was an all-time bad performance when you factor in pull back the layers of the context of the playoffs were still on the line. But hey, from a Brent Venables standpoint, it's not the year you wanted to have. So probably, you can easily go 7-5. You could beat LSU next week, but you're definitely going to a bowl game. Like I said, not the season when you wanted to have, but it isn't a total one that you're right, man. That was just a really bad season for a program that prides themselves on going to bowl games. And I know bowl games aren't what they used to be, but still, if you could go win in Baton Rouge next week, you at least salvage the season where, let's be honest, on offense, not everything went your way. You had a coordinator change. You were bitten by the injury bug like I've never seen before on one side of the football. So maybe you cut your losses and it's like, hey, we got to go hit a home run with this offensive coordinator hire. Looks to be the Washington State guy. Conversation for another day, but not all is bad. That's the big signature win of your first year in the SEC. So give Brent Venables and them credit. It was a good complimentary game plan across the board. It wasn't anything special on offense from an explosive standpoint, but it was just, hey, it was smart football played within themselves.
Smart. No, that's the beauty of it. And I think that's the part that people are going to overlook. Well, the offense didn't really score that often. Or they capitalized on turnovers. They played keep away from Alabama. Sometimes your best asset is playing defense. And I'm not talking about defense coming when it actually is the 11 men on the field tackling. I'm talking about playing keep away with your offense, capitalizing on 2nd and 8 and converting. I'm talking about an offense picking up a grand total, if I'm not mistaken, of 19 first downs. I'm talking about an offense being able to see that clock run all the way down to the wire and meticulously know that Alabama is in concern. And now let's talk about Alabama, because we are starting winners on the show, but I want to talk about Alabama before we move back to Brent Venables, because Brent Venables, I think, won a lot of people over tonight for next year to bide him time to build the roster how he sees fit. But Alabama, this is, again, like we talked about with Ole Miss earlier today. Alabama needed to handle business. It wasn't a look ahead. Get the job done, make it work, handle what you can control, and once you're there, you're in the playoffs. We know this, Dave. If Alabama wins tonight and Alabama wins against Auburn in the Iron Bowl, they go to the SEC championship game. Alabama, that script day, they're not leaving it out. They're not. So all you have to do is handle your job. Do what you can do. And the entire performance, top to bottom, it's not just Jalen Milroe. It's the play calling. It's the offensive line. Elijah Pritchard and Caden Proctor might as well have been ragdolls the way they were getting bullied up front by Ethan Burke and Thomas. The way that this defensive line attacked up the middle, they were fantastic. They made sure they took away the rushing attack. They did a great job of scheming and putting Kip Lewis on him. And then when you saw Jalen Milroe get flustered, he made mistakes. We got to go ahead and call it like it is. He made mistakes. And unfortunately, by the time that the mistakes were finally even a little bit corrected, you were already down. You were already needing to capitalize, and the clock was just not your friend. And the best part was they knew it too. Oklahoma knew it too. The clock was not going to be their friend that night, and there was nothing else Alabama could say except for good game. I guess that now we have to wait for more chaos to occur.
Yeah, I didn't know why Alabama didn't really stretch the field vertically. The whole offensive game plan was just it was really bad. It was like you thought you came up with something against LSU, and in reality, LSU's better on defense, but still it's not a good defense by any means.
No.
It's almost like you stuck with that game plan. It was like, dude, Brent Venables and them are too good of coaches to let Jalen Milroe beat them, dude. They're going to take him, especially with his legs. And again, if there was a vulnerability in the Oklahoma defense, it was the vertical passing game. And you never took any real shots. And I get it. When you get down 21 points, they're pinning their ears back. They're dropping back. Yeah, it's not all going to be there. But I'm really talking about the first half game plan. It was bad. It was no other way to sugarcoat it. It was a bad offensive performance across the board.
It was bad play calling. It was bad execution on the offensive line. More importantly, it was bad from Jalen Milroe. The first interception, I don't know where the hell you got that one. The second one on the Kip Lewis pick, I completely can understand it. You know what you were going to, but it was clear as day. Ryan Williams was nowhere near the line, nowhere near it. And you watch as Sanders jumps in front of the ball and runs it back. That's a screenplay. You can't run that there. When they're playing press man coverage like that, you cannot run a screenplay against a young wide receiver. You can't. Now I want to talk about the play that we have to talk about. It's not going to matter. It isn't. Because if Alabama still would have lost 24-10, it would have been a double-digit loss on the road. Another woe for Alabama. But I am so sick and tired, 100%, of the Zebras making the wrong calls. Where in the hell was that illegal contact on Ryan Williams? Where? How? How is that even close to being comparable? And you take it away, and finally, you watch as Kalen DeBoer, who people say is a little timid, he's a little bit, on the calm, cool, collected side, lose his freaking mind because of even he knows that has to be the single worst call I have seen in my entire life. That is so bad. It is up there with the Nick Emanwari interception. I'm sorry.
You're talking about the cover-up one?
I'm talking about the fourth down conversion for the touchdown to Ryan Williams.
Yeah, when he wasn't covered up. He wasn't covered up, is what I'm saying. It was the cover up, is what it was. That's what he was all pissed off about. Formation was fine.
They were the referees have been trash all year. It was a horrible, egregious, ridiculous call, and it's not going to change the outcome of the game. It isn't, but I don't care. Get it figured out. This has been a problem for the entire season. And now you have, those were the refs that also were at the Texas game, the Texas-Georgia game, where they threw trash onto the field and then they got the turnover. It has been terrible all year, atrocious. Do we have to go back to grade 1 school to teach people what is proper officiating? Because of right now, South Carolina, who may have a shot to go to the playoff, because 9-3 is now not off the table. It isn't, with the way that crazy college football has gone today and how it could go in rivalry week. South Carolina's not the table, but they shouldn't even be in that situation because if they should have gotten the pick 6 for Nick Emanwari and ran it back. I'm not saying that they didn't blow a 17-point lead. I'm saying that call was trash. There was trash calls in the Alabama-LSU game. There was trash calls in the Georgia-Texas game. There were trash calls in the Oklahoma-Missouri game. There were trash calls, and it's not holding calls. If you have holding calls, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but like another sport, because you're always going to have holds in college football. In any football, you're going to have holds that get missed all the time. But plays like that, that's atrocious. That's
in my opinion, because it wasn't illegal touching. It was illegal touching because he was covered up. It wasn't because he went out of bounds and came back in bounds. I think that's where some people were confused. It was the formation, and that's what Kalen was all pissed off about.
Right, but still, the fact that they took away a touchdown when it was clear as day, not wrong.
See, I think that should be a reviewable call.
It should be
reviewable. I think that should be pushing him out of bounds and him coming back in. I don't think should be, but like the cover up, you should be able to go look that up and be able to determine if it's the correct call or not.
It was disgusting, not even remotely close. But Alabama still shot up in the foot, and it was because of their offense. I thought their defense, for as bad as it was at times, because it was, they allowed them to score. They did a lot of 2 touchdown runs. Their defense still did enough. And now the offense couldn't deliver. To me, that was a way worse loss for Alabama because if there was no life offensively than the Vanderbilt loss. Because at least in the Vanderbilt game, it was a back and forth battle, a pick six early on, kind of cost Alabama a little bit of momentum, but it was a back and forth blow.
Defensively, it felt very similar to Vanderbilt.
It felt
because Oklahoma was doing whatever they wanted to on the ground. Right. They were essentially telling you we're going to run and we're not going to let Jackson Arnold have any opportunities to turn this. 68 passing yards, and you won that game by 21 points, by 3 touchdowns. I mean, Kirk Herbstreit said it on the broadcast. Like, I told you Alabama held them to 68 yards. You probably think, well, man, how many touchdowns did they win by?
How bad was it? Do you remember
Deontay Lawson injury is massive.
Yeah.
I mean, that went Alabama's national title hopes out the door, even if they won tonight. I mean, that's 2 brutal injuries they've had defensively in 2 of their last 3 games, with Q Robinson on the edge spot where they're already thin, and then tonight Deontay Lawson. That was a bad one.
The other thing is that we have to talk about it. There's going to be potentially a 3-loss team in the college football playoff at 9-3. I don't know how, but there is a scenario. What happens if what happens if somehow, some way, Syracuse upsets Miami next week? Miami right now should be feeling good. SMU should be feeling really good about their spots of going to the ACC title game and potentially losing and still getting it, because they'll be 11-2 the way they've played. But there is a scenario where there is a 9-3 team in as the 11 spot. It's crazy. South Carolina has a shot. Ole Miss now actually still has a shot. I doubt that it's Ole Miss, but they still have a shot. Alabama still has a shot. They got to win next week. Dave, if I were to ask you right now, clear as day, who do you think is the one that's getting in if there was a 9-3 team?
It's too early. Right now?
Right now.
Too early to say. I mean, it's too early to say, probably. Right now.
No. Your gut. If you had a gut intuition, who would you say?
I mean, I don't think you could put South Carolina in because they lost to both Ole Miss and Alabama. How would you manage to do that? You know what I mean?
Do you really care about head-to-heads when it's clear as day that they didn't last week with LSU and they didn't before when it was Tennessee versus Alabama?
I'm talking about me, who I would put.
Yeah,
that's really what I'm going off of. So that's it. I mean, who will the committee put? I don't know. We haven't seen them in this situation, because it's in that situation it'd be 3 teams at 9-3 in the SEC, but it wouldn't be like how the Georgia, Tennessee, and Alabama thing went, where it's like they all 3 went 1-1 against each other. You know what I mean? That's where I'd be a little struggle with. But again, by no means tonight did Alabama look like a playoff team.
No means.
Or they deserve it. That's where I'm like, you couldn't be mad if they put South Carolina in front of them. I don't know if I'd really understand it, except I really wouldn't understand it, but I don't even know how you could be mad, because you'd be like, well, I mean, Alabama's had opportunities. How could you even be that mad about it? I mean, it would be interesting, those discussions, how they would talk about that, though, Cole, really, because like between those 3 teams, because South Carolina would be 0-2 against Ole Miss and Alabama, and Ole Miss hammered South Carolina. And then those 2 teams, Alabama and Ole Miss, what's their common opponent? They both beat Georgia. Then what? They both beat South Carolina, then LSU.
Yeah.
Who's going to get down a common opponent?
There's so many scenarios where it feels like South Carolina would get screwed simply because of head-to-heads and everything else. But I'm sorry, if you're talking about the way that this team has looked, the way the team has played, the one that feels like a playoff team right now is South Carolina. How they have played the last 5 games feels like a playoff team.
Over Alabama and Ole Miss, for sure, especially Alabama tonight.
Over 100% both. There's not even a difference when it comes to that. Let's talk about Brent Venables. He's got an opportunity to probably build up some equity this offseason. He's got to get the right offensive coordinator. We've heard some rumors about who it is. We've also heard some rumors that there is a potential quarterback that would be coming with him from Pullman, Washington. If that is true, we are not reporting that right now. So please do not say that SEC Unfiltered is saying that this is the hire. We don't know that at this time. What we are saying is we are hearing these rumors. That's a good start.
Nerds. I don't even know.
That's a good start. They got to get better on the offensive line. They're going to have to go into the transfer portal, and they're going to have to bring in some defensive talent. They're going to have to win a little bit of recruiting, which is going to be really challenging, I think, at this point, but they still can build a decent recruiting class. And they got to maintain as much talent as possible to come back next year. I still feel like Brent Venables is the guy. I do. I stand on that. I think he has to hire a better staff. I think he has to make sure the offensive line is not getting his quarterback killed. And you got to make sure that whoever is your quarterback, if you want to ride with Jackson Arnold, you ride with Jackson Arnold. If you want to ride with Michael Hawkins, you ride with Michael Hawkins. If you want to go get the kid out of Pullman, Washington, do so. but you got to make sure that whoever is your quarterback, number one, is a consistent passer, and number two, can easily be protected. That's fair.
Yeah, I mean, off one game, I'm not going to say I truly believe Brent Venables is the head coach in Norman in the next 3 or 4 years. I'm not, again, TBD. I like the defense. Obviously, they got to replace a bunch of older guys. But let's see who he hires as the OC. Let's see who the quarterback is. Just, again, phenomenal game plan tonight. Outcoached Alabama in all 3 phases of the football game. Tip of the cap to Brent Venables, John Finley, Zach Alley, all those guys. Phenomenal game plan tonight. I'm just not going to be like, yes, he is now he's the next Bob Stoops.
No.
I don't know. TBD, and I feel like Oklahoma's a pretty realistic fan base. I think they would agree too. Like, great win tonight. Let's go beat LSU next week. Let's finish 7-5. Not the season we wanted in our first year, but you know what? Injuries were a big reason why, and that's fair too. Both things can be true at once. You underachieved a little bit, but injuries were a big factor in that. Next year's really big for him. Next year overall is just massive. That's where I think I'll have a big determining factor if he's actually the guy in Norman long term, in my opinion.
I think that right now we can at least have the conversation. He's buying some equity. He can be the guy. Now, again, also, if you didn't believe he was the guy before tonight, there's no way that you believe he's the guy after tonight. Like for long term. I get that. I am somebody who has been beating the drum for Brent Venables. I think that he is the guy. I think Kalen DeBoer is the guy for Alabama. I'm not ready to give up on either one of these two in any way, shape, or form. I'm not. What I am here to say is that for one side, you lost some equity. You lost a lot of equity with some fan base, with the fan bases down in Gumptown. And more importantly, you're set up for what is going to be, for many people, a must-win dominant performance in the Iron Bowl just to gain back even a smidge of respect.
So I'll be honest with you. I don't know how many people honestly care about that game.
I don't know how many people are even locked in at this point. I don't. I have no idea.
Obviously, I think when the game comes on next Saturday, I think people want to win, but I don't think people are going to be – I think people's opinions on this season's already set in stone.
It's 100% set in stone.
It was underachieving. I think 10-2 was the goal. You make 10-2, you make the playoffs heading into it, first-year coach. I don't care what kind of dynasty you're taking over. It's a transition year. That'd have been a good year. The way they won every big game except Tennessee, they played it. That's the wild part. You lose to Vanderbilt, you lose to Oklahoma, 2 teams that you should be better than. And you were out schemed too. It wasn't like Alabama was having these fluky 5 turnover games. Somebody hit some Hail Mary at the end to beat you. You know what I mean? It was just you got whipped in both those games.
The other thing I don't want to hear is that, Nick Saban lost to Louisiana Monroe in his first year. Guys, Nick Saban didn't have this type of roster. Nick Saban did not have this amount of talent. Nick Saban did not have these type of players that were already built up, and half of them were coming in from a college football playoff appearance last year. And some of them came down with Kalen DeBoer from Seattle. So they were in a national championship last year. They had those guys. Saban didn't have a 17-year-old wide receiver that is probably better than most 20-year-olds in Ryan Williams. Saban didn't have that year one. So this was a team that was built to at least make it to the playoff, maybe even win a playoff game. But they're not. And right now, because of where it is, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't. We have no idea if a 3-loss team is getting in. But I will tell you what. I have said there are 4 main components that match for me the college football playoff rankings. This is how I rank teams. Number 1 is resume. Number 2 is strength of record. Number 3 is on-field performance. And number 4 is eye test. Eye test tonight, Alabama's out and South Carolina's in. I don't care about the head-to-heads. I don't. Because one team right now over the last month, when you needed to see this team kind of hit their stride, and even in that Alabama game, you're a 2-point conversion away from potentially winning a football game on the road in Tuscaloosa. One team has been playing like they are a top 15 opponent. Tonight, Alabama looked like a bottom 15 team in the SEC. All time. They did. It was terrible. Terrible execution. I'm sorry. Doesn't mean I don't believe in. That does not mean I do not believe in Kalen DeBoer. That does not mean I don't believe that Alabama can still be Alabama. That doesn't mean that the dynasty is dead. That doesn't mean anything. What it means is that Alabama, from an eye test perspective, did not look like an opponent that belongs in the college football playoff top 12. They don't.
No, I mean, who's arguing with you on that? I don't think anybody is.
Oh, but there'll be people out there that will say,
No,
no.
nobody's realistic that thinks Alabama tonight should be in the college football playoffs.
Yeah, there will be some. I promise you, there will be some. Dave, you know this fan base.
Dude, a guy with 89 followers on Twitter don't count. I'm talking about somebody who's like credible.
No, nobody that works in this industry like we do will say.
Like I might expect Greg McElroy to come out there and be like, I think Alabama 9-3 should be in if they beat Auburn.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Oh, Randy Bond just drilled that. Jeez.
Well, we're going to talk about that, and we're probably going to talk about that in a minute.
Sorry, guys. I got the most of it. My emotions got the best of me there.
But let me ask you, in closing, for Alabama at this point, what do you need to see in the offseason to gain back a little bit of morale? Is there any chance right now?
I mean, offensively, I think Jalen Milroe's future there is still up in the air. I think you lose a couple guys. You lose a leader, Tyler Booker, on the offensive line. I think you got to get back to on both sides of the line of scrimmage. Probably defensive line you would have thought have been a little better this year. You're probably going to lose both your linebackers. Yeah, they're going to have to go into the portal this year and do a pretty good job of filling some holes, I think. And to be fair to them, they didn't get a chance to go into the portal last year because Nick retired like January 11th, so they couldn't get any SEC portal kids. They had to go get kids from other conferences just due to league rule. So it'll be interesting. This kind of feels like it's their first time being able like to have a full DAC to go work with, get some more money in that NIL. But I think from an overall team perspective, it's got to start back on the line of scrimmage. And I think as a staff, I think they got to understand to win big in this league, you got to be able to run the football and you got to consistently do it. I think offensively, they got to get back to, hey, I know in Kalen DeBoer's entire career, go look back at it at Fresno State with Jake Haener, obviously Michael Penix at Washington. He's kind of like a basketball coach who just wants to keep it in his best player on offense's hands all the time. And I think, dude, you have two good running backs. You had a good interior offensive line this year. You got to be able to go win the SEC, win consistently year in, year out. You got to be able to have a physical, dominant presence on the offensive line in a run game. And I feel like they've been so inconsistent, not running the football, but just like being almost just like dialing into the run game. When you go back and watch the game on Sundays, it's like, all right, dude, you gained 3 yards, Nick Sheridan, and you just abandoned the run game. Go commit to the run game. That'd be something I'd say from a quality control offseason study. I would recommend them on offense.
They got a portal. They got to get veterans, and they got to make sure that this roster is well equipped. And more importantly, they got to convince whoever is a superstar that they think is a part of their foundation, i.e. Ryan Williams, this is still the best place for you. That's what I look for. Like, rate, review, subscribe. Make sure that you're following us on all the social channels, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at SEC Unfiltered. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Follow us. Follow Dave at Mock 10 Sports. Me at Mr. Cole Thompson. Check out all of our great work found at SECUnfiltered.com. For Dave Shumate, I'm Cole Thompson. Oklahoma, you're going to a bowl game. Congratulations. Alabama, you're not going to the college football playoff. Peace.